Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's impromptu live chat. It's good to see you guys in the chat box. Hi, Jermaine. Good to see you. Looks like you're starting off the conversation. Pink Meadows, I also see you. And I'm sure as we go along, the rest of our channel, the channel will log on and we can have a full-blown conversation. You're probably wondering why I decided to do an impromptu live chat. And here's why. I was going to make this conversation a video. And then I thought, well, I already have some videos on my channel that talks about projective identification. And I'm probably going to make this conversation more educational. You guys are going to have questions for me, I know. You're probably going to have bits and pieces of your own life that you can relate to. And that you could share with us. So I thought, you know what, I better just go ahead and do an impromptu live chat. So I'm interested to see how many of you will get the notices and how many of you can sign on for tonight's conversation. It looks like everything is okay on my end. So I'm probably going to just jump in. I'm going to put you guys back up on the screen here and see what happens. I couldn't see anything different. Could you guys? I don't know. I see. Hi, Rochella. Hi, Johan. Kobe. Good to see you guys. Yeah, that's good. Jermaine says divine impromptu timing for me. That's awesome. That's good to know. Very good to know. But I don't know how this little chat box on the side, do you see that on the right side of your screen? And I'm like, why are we even using this? Because you can't even, let me try something, guys. Hold on a minute. No, it just doesn't add up to me. It doesn't even zoom in. So I don't even know why it's there. So it's okay. It's okay. We're going to leave it there. Okay. And we're just going to jump in. Hi, T Bunny Shy. Good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I'm just welcoming you because I'm looking at you sign in. I see a bunch of you signing in. So that's good to see. I'm surprised that you guys... Yeah, you're right, Rochella. It is small. Rochella's saying, yeah, we can see it, but it's small. I know. It's like, what is this? I don't even want to put it up there, but I'll leave it up there until I can figure out what to do with it. But I was just saying at the beginning of the chat, guys, that this is an impromptu live chat because I've done videos on projective identification and it makes sense, but it hits a little bit different when you do a live chat. And you can tease and pull apart concepts a little easier. And you can also have the input from people who are live and watching with you. So that's why I decided to do an impromptu live chat as opposed to posting a video tonight. So as you guys sign in, thank you so much, Ellie Wen. I see you over there. I'm going to go ahead and just jump in. Let's talk about this complex problem that happens in many families. And I actually have a case now that involves projective identification. I mentioned the term to my mom the other day, and my mom was like, per what? And I says, Mom, projective identification. I feel like that's happened to you over the years in our family. And she's like, I don't even know what that means. So I ended up breaking it down to her that there is a difference between projective identification and projection. So I'm actually going to put that in the chat box so that you can see this a little bit. So I'm going to say there is a difference between projective identification and projection. They're not the same thing. And doesn't it feel like it should be the same thing, projective identification and projection? But it's not. Projection is I have these internalized pieces of myself. And this is what toxic families struggle with all the time. And as you're going to learn in this brief conversation tonight, your family has most likely projected onto you various things that has nothing to do with who you are, your character, your behavior, your belief system, your values. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. But projection is I have these things on the inside of me that I don't like. They feel like they're wrong. They feel like, this is not my thing that I should be holding on to. It's too shameful. It's too grievous. It's too bad. And because of that, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to take this outside of me and I'm going to project this onto you. I'm going to discharge all of this negative energy, negative mindset, terrible values, dispositions, ugly attitudes. I'm going to just take all of that because I don't want to carry that, because I know I shouldn't and I know it's wrong. And I'm going to project it onto you. And then you're going to be seen as the one who is the problem, because I'm going to put you in the position where other people can see that I'm really not the issue, you are. Projection. Now, projective identification, guys, is a little bit different, because projective identification is, I'm going to take all those same pieces of me and I'm going to project onto you. But here's where things get a little bit different. You, in turn, you respond. You begin to internalize or introject those things that are being projected onto you. And now you are taking on the mindset. You're taking on the value system. You're taking on the beliefs. You're taking on the behaviors of the person who has projected these things onto you. Let's say, for example, you have a very antisocial kind of a father. He's cold, he's mean, he's callous, he's disregarding, he's immature, right, guys? And what happens to this dad is he knows that he's wrong. He just doesn't know how to grapple with his thoughts about things. He doesn't know how to grapple with the things in his heart. So he projects them onto you as his child. And he says, how dare you have that kind of a disposition? How dare you have that kind of mentality? I don't want to ever hear this again from you because it's horrible. It's awful, right? But over time, growing up under a father like this, growing up, you most likely have heard a lot of the things that he has said about other people. You've probably observed it, right? And so over time with this kind of a father, you've just kind of taken in or introjected all of his negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and belief systems. You've just kind of taken them in, and now they've become a part of you. Let me turn my heat down, guys. I'm a little bit hot in here. Yeah. I swear I'm going through like the beginning stages of menopause. I better not be, but I swear I am. I swear I am. 1 minute I'm cold, next minute I'm hot. Then sometimes I'm cold and hot at the same time. And I have both my air conditioning on in addition to a sweater. And my mother and my siblings are like, something is wrong with you. I'm like, I'm fine. And I'm sweating bullets. Okay. But right? Hanafa El-Hameen, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean, right? Yeah. It's bad for we women over the age of 35. Okay, so let me get back into this. Okay, but this dad causes you to feel like over time that those are your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, but it's not. The reality is, you've taken on dad's view of things. Have you ever been in a family situation? And I do see you, Jeremy Robinson. I'm going to put you up on the screen so people can see what you're saying. You said like projecting abuse. You can. I'll use you for an example, Jeremy Robinson. It's almost like dad has always harmed his family, said ugly, evil things about other people. He's been very critical. He's been very emotionally and psychologically abusive. But what he does over time is he doesn't take responsibility for his abusive nature. So what does he do? He projects it onto other people, which may be you, Jeremy Robinson. It could be me, right? And dad projects that abusive mindset, that emotional abuse, that bully type mentality onto you. And so projective identification says, you know what? I am starting to identify with those projected pieces from my father. So now my identity becomes abuser, manipulator, cold and callous person, right? Those are not your traits. Those are not your ways of thinking about the world and seeing the world. But with a father who is domineering, and abusive, you can begin to take on all of his abusive characteristics, all of his attitudes and dispositions, and you begin to, over time, identify with them as part of who you are. And that's why it's called projective identification, because you begin to identify. Now, take this, for example. I once had a client who would come to me. She was seeing me 2 times a week for therapy. Why? Because her mother, the older she was getting, she was becoming very clumsy. She would fall all the time. She had dementia, then she was diagnosed with a heart condition, and then she had diabetes. So my client said, you know what, I'm going to let my mom just come into my home, and she's going to be living with me, my 4 children, and my husband. And that was a complete disaster. I told her it would be a disaster, and she was like, no, I think, Ms. Chandler, you're probably wrong about that at this point. And eventually I was right, because she came back to me in tears saying, I can't stand my mother. I feel like she's an awful, evil person. Then she would say to me, but then aren't parts of her in me? I have her genes, right? I have her disposition. I have her attitude sometimes. Okay. And that would become, I don't like that about me. I don't like that about me. I don't like that. I don't like that I'm like my selfish, guilt tripping, manipulative, triangulating mother. And if she's my mother, then her blood is in me. So then I must be like that. And so then this is what happens next. And you've probably been in this position as the adult child in the family. So then guess what? I'm going to project those pieces that I don't like about me onto my daughter or my son. And so now my hatred is not towards myself. And I'm really not going to turn to my mother and see that she's done anything wrong per se. I'm not going to look at my child and say, unfortunately, I don't like you. And so then what happens to you? You begin to identify with all those ugly pieces that your mom is holding or hoarding inside. And now you begin to kind of act out all those ugly things your mother doesn't like. Let me give you a little bit of a visual of this, so that you can kind of see what I'm getting at here. And it's kind of bad. It's kind of bad when this happens, because you almost end up getting blamed. You end up getting blamed. Nope, that's not going to work. You end up getting blamed for the generational trauma that's in your family. If we flip this and make it a father-son, we could say your dad doesn't like his dad. And now your dad sees some elements of himself that he doesn't like because it reminds him of his own father, right? So then he starts disliking himself. And then the process of disliking himself, he projects onto you as the son those characteristics he doesn't like. And so then the hatred shifts from himself to you. And in a sense, dad can become critical of you. He can become judgmental of you. He can become very emotionally and verbally abusive towards you, because in a sense, he's fighting all those things he knows that are inside of his heart and his soul, right? He's fighting that. But instead of going within and saying, you know what, these are issues I need to take responsibility for, he projects them onto you, and then you become the evil one. So let me show you how this goes. This is how psychology has kind of identified this. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a portrait view. I think that's what it's called, right? Okay, so let's see. This is grandfather. Grandfather is the one who is, hold on guys, bear with me, okay? Grandfather is the one who is arrogant. Okay, so I'm going to say arrogant, cold, mean, non-tolerant. Okay, these are your grandfather's ways. Okay. Now, what happens is your father, so this is dad. So your father begins to say, my dad is mean. I hate him. So this is your dad. So your dad is saying, I hate my dad. He's mean. Okay. So your dad then says, I don't like this, so I hate myself. Okay. And then an extension of I hate myself then becomes projected onto you. Okay. And then it then becomes I hate you. So this is how this looks. I hope this makes sense. Don't laugh at my artwork, guys. Okay. Here's a visual. For those of you who like my visuals, can you see that? Grandfather, arrogant, cold, mean, non-tolerant, right? Your father says, my dad is mean. I hate him. Then dad says, I hate myself now. See that? And then that gets projected onto you down here. Here you are down here. Right? And so you're at the end of the totem pole, however they say it. And that becomes, I hate you. And it's kind of scary when it happens that way, guys, you know, because you're the innocent one in the generational pattern. But grandfather is disliked, right? Your dad's dad is disliked. Your own father doesn't like that he sees characteristics of his father in himself. So then he says, I don't like that about me. So I'm going to project it onto my own son or my own daughter. And so then my emotion becomes, I hate you in return. So what happens there is the relationship between you and your parent is compromised because they have these deep, dark feelings about the dynamic, the family dynamic, about themselves in the dynamic, and it gets projected onto you. And sadly, it becomes, now I hate you. So then where's the identification part? Well, the identification part, guys, comes in when you begin to say, oh, so dad hates me and he hates his father too. So then that must mean that something is wrong with me on the inside. And believe it or not, you can begin to act out in unconscious ways, not knowing that you are kind of fulfilling what your father has already said is your fault. Does that make sense, guys? It's almost like you fall into that pattern, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You fall into that pattern that your father has already projected onto you, and you begin acting out in ways that, can you believe this, kind of reinforces your dad's thoughts and feelings about you. And so in a sense, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, the expectation of, you know, this is where I see my dad. Now I see myself lower than my dad because I'm similar to him. And I start hating myself. And you know what? Now my son, I'm going to project those pieces onto him, and now I'm going to dislike him. So my expectation of my son is really small at this point because I see a lot of bad things in him. The problem still is your father. You know, he's the big elephant in the room that needs to kind of, you know, stop and look at himself. He also needs therapy because what he's doing is he's taking his bad relationship with his father and he's projecting, onto you, and that puts you in a bind. Now, psychology around this projective identification says that this is an unconscious process. It really is acting in ways towards you that causes you to then behave in ways that is expected, right? So it's acting in ways towards you that causes you to behave in ways that confirms what that toxic parent believes about you. So in a sense, you begin to fulfill the prophecy that you are the bad egg of the family. There's also a different idea about projective identification. And you tell me if you guys have ever experienced this in your toxic, you know, dysfunctional family system, but it's almost like a split self. You know, that unstable parent who's projecting everything onto you, that arrogant sibling who is projecting negative things onto you, that pompous grandparent or grandfather, grandmother that's projecting things onto you. It's almost as if they have kind of a split personality. They seem to be quite okay on one side, but on the other side, they really aren't, because there's pieces of them that they will accept and they will like. The part of them that they don't like, it's almost like they split off, right? And they take all that junk that they have over here and they turn to you and say, here you go, carry this, right? Because it's a lot easier than just saying that I am the problem. I like me at times and I don't like me at times. It would be so much easier, right, guys, for individuals like this to just say it, but they can't do it. So what do? They kind of split off, here's good me and here's bad me. And I'm going to take all of the bad me and I'm going to give it to you over there and hope that you can carry it, because you are the external object that I'm going to project all of my ugly parts of myself into or onto, because it's a lot easier, right? These kind of individuals, guys, before I go to the chat box, I see what you're saying, Hanifa El Amin says they love denial. They do love denial. And part of the denial is, sorry, Jeremy. Part of the denial is, if I can just ignore that other side of me, life would be so much better. So I'm just going to project onto you, right? These individuals tend to be very hypercritical, and they also tend to be hypocritical, right? So hypercritical and hypocritical, that's the word I'm looking for. They're hypocrites. Have you ever seen, let's say mom, dad, a family member, a sibling, a cousin say, you know what, I just don't like dancers. They go around so arrogant because they think they're cute and they're very firm and fit. And, I just don't like who they are. They never look right in their clothes, and they tend to be, rather arrogant most of the time. Dancers are like strippers. And, there's that critical on and on and on and on. But if you just pause, and pause them, then it becomes evident, in a sense, that you are not talking about things that you just dislike. You are also not talking about things that actually gets on your nerves. You're talking about bits and pieces of your own identity that you're having a hard time grappling with. So you're taking all of those ugly attitudes, right? That hypocritical, disposition, and you're taking that belief system, and you don't like how it makes you feel, so you're going to just project that onto every other dancer that you see, and you make it their problem. I'm not just going to own that this is my thing. I'm going to say that this is how you guys are. I think we all do it to a certain extent, but when it becomes clinical, that is where the problem begins, because now you're dealing with a person, a family member, a spouse, who cannot see because they are blinded. They are blinded by projective identification. They are blinded by the way that they feel about themselves, and they're passing it on to you. And there you are, for most of you on the channel tonight, or on the live chat tonight, there you are holding all of this stuff, right? Their ugly disposition, their bad attitude, their hypercritical disposition, the hypocritical mindset. You're holding all that, right? And you're trying to carry it. And that parent, for example, can just keep throwing things in your direction, right? Because it's easier. You kind of become this object that constantly receives all of their ugly dispositions, thoughts, behaviors, attitudes, poor values, and the list goes on. But after you carry all of that, so what do you do with it? Because you have no one to project that onto, right? Because it's really not your stuff to begin with. So what do? You introject. It's like you swallow it, and it's a bad experience. I was just talking to one of my clients the other day about it, and you just digest it. And unfortunately, you're not just digesting it in heart and mind. Sometimes you're kind of digesting in a behavioral way. So you can start to act out, as I said earlier, you can start to act out the things that you have introjected. And that is the scary part of projective identification. Imagine growing up, or maybe you have, let me know in the chat box. Imagine growing up with a self-loathing, arrogant, critical, and toxic mother. And everything you do is wrong because she sees herself in you. No, don't wear that. That's a wrong shirt for your complexion. Oh my God, don't say that. Don't ever say that again. It's so embarrassing. Oh, don't use that word. That word, I hate that word. Don't ever use it again. Never wear those shoes again, Robert. Those shoes are horrid. Oh my God, don't ever wear those again. Learn to sit with your leg crossed. That looks more distinguished. There you go. I like that instead, right? You guys know what that sounds like. Or why would you marry him? He's not for you. I know he's not for you because I raised you and I know all there is to know about you. He is not for you. Why would you go down that road? All those critical things, right? And all of those critical things should be kind of turned back to mom, right? But instead, they get introjected, and maybe you start believing you married the wrong person. Maybe you start believing your shoes are horrid. Maybe you start believing that you have the wrong morals and values in life, right? And it gets painful in your life and in your world because, in a sense, you ready for this? And we're gonna get into this just a little bit later on. You're buying into the false narrative. And when you buy into the false narrative, it's like taking a bite out of a sandwich. You're really introjecting or swallowing or digesting all of that false narrative that really isn't the truth. And so you may find yourself over time as an adult really feeling like you don't know who you are, and that can be rather upsetting. So brief chat tonight, guys. I'm going to try to wrap up at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. I want to give you guys some common behaviors that you can look for in your family members or a partner. And then I'm going to tell you what this impact is. Part of the impact I already gave you. It's really buying into the false narrative and digesting them, believing that it's a part of you when it isn't. You can see this, for example, in situations where there's race and there's ethnicity and there's culture. And let's see, for example, you don't mind marrying a guy who comes from a Jewish family. You don't mind marrying a female or a woman who comes from a Catholic family who is also Greek and Irish, right? You don't have a problem being in an intermarriage because that is a very normal thing, despite what humanity tried to make it so many years ago, right? But you can kind of look at it from that lens and say, oh my God, I see where, I can kind of take on the attitudes against a race of people that my parent had, right? I can start to take on and digest and introject these very ugly discriminatory mindsets and attitudes and dispositions toward people who are nothing like me just because I grew up under that and I sat up under it and I've heard it, right? I've heard it in my family, in my extended family, there's kind of like this, don't get comfortable with being outside of a certain group. Don't get comfortable with being of a, different race and a culture. So what, you're this and that, the heck with being mixed or multiracial. We don't care. So you better introject that. You better take that in and see yourself as one particular thing. Because we're not going to acknowledge that maybe your dad is half this or maybe your brother is half this, right? So you can even see the projective identification when it comes to race, culture, ethnicity, right? And it's an ugly thing because then it's almost like it becomes alive in you if you grab onto that. Some people are strong enough to say, like I was in my own family, I'm not going to go for that. So if you want to believe that, good for you. But I am going to research who I am. I'm going to look at my ethnic and racial heritage, and I'm going to then be happy about what my heritage is based on my father's side of the family, based on my mother's extended family or my grandfather's extended family. So you can see it there. Another example that you guys, before I go to the chat box, another example that you guys may relate to is having a narcissistic mother, father who's hypercritical, right? They don't want you wearing certain things. They don't want you to get comfortable with wearing pants and Nike shoes, baggy pants and Nike shoes. They don't want you to get comfortable with wearing sweatshirts and hoodies. Why? Because maybe your narcissistic parents believe that is too lax. It's too hip hop. It's too hip. It's too cultural. You need to have on a suit and a tie every day with dress shoes, and your pants have to be altered correctly, which I don't blame them for that one. But you can kind of look at that example too and say, wait a minute, maybe my mindset about, how I see other people in the world and how I judge how they look has more to do with my parents' influence than it does within me, right? And so you can see it there too. It's a pretty interesting concept. And I think, this short conversation is going to feed into tomorrow's live chat, maybe Saturday's live chat if I feel well enough to do Saturday. I've been kind of on the sick side of everything, guys. But I really want to give you this information because I think it's helpful. These unintegrated parts of the family that you're around, the partner that you have, right? These are unintegrated parts of them. And, they're just kind of hitting you with this bomb and that bomb and take this and take that. And that's because they don't have safety and comfort within themselves. And they don't like what they see in themselves. It's easier to say, I'm just going to throw this over there. You catch it. And then once you catch it, please introject that. Please take that in, because then I never have to look at the fact that it was a me thing. It's a you thing, Okay. Thank you so much, Johanne. I really appreciate you for that. Dandelion tea. Yes, I used to get it. I love it. I'm thinking of going to Target once I get off from here and do that. I was diagnosed so I went to the hospital on the weekend. I'll give you guys like a little insight here as to how sick I was over the weekend. I was in the hospital a couple of days ago. I just went to the emergency room because I had cardiac spasms. They were really bad. And I'm like, I don't get, what did I do wrong? And so I get there and, they kept me for 4 hours. I thought they were going to keep me overnight. And they did this full examination. I'm like, this is a wonderful thing that happens on the day of my birthday. You know what I mean? I was in CT scan after CT scan after CT scan after blood work and more blood work. And they diagnosed me with esophageal spasms in addition to cardiac spasms. And I've just been feeling awful, like nauseous, sick, dizzy, the list goes on. So I am an open door for whatever natural remedies you guys have. I appreciate you. Thank you for the dandelion tea, Johanne. I really appreciate you, because I'm going to go get some now that you mentioned that. That has always helped me. I don't know what it is other than it's the natural properties of the dandelion, right? And it gets cut up, processed. I try to get the loose leaf because that tends to be the most healthy, right, guys? Not the tea bags, because there can actually be chemicals within the tea bag that can get rid of all the benefits of the dandelion. So it just gets deep over time. But thank you so much for that. I am going to strongly consider going to Target and getting that. Thank you. Let me say hello to number one, Johanne Kobe. Good to see you back tonight. I also see Rochella and Jermaine, good to see you both back. And this is an impromptu live chat, right, guys? So you didn't expect this coming. Mark Lee, hello. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for confirming that. Thank you. I feel like you're a part of the team when you do that. Mark Lee, it's good to see you. T Bunny Shy, good to see you. Simply Sabia, hello and welcome. I think you're a new one on here on the live chat. Good to see you and welcome. Okay, stay with me, guys. Bear with me, as what I was trying to say. As I get through some of this. AMB, hello and welcome. Good to see you. And thank you for all your comments. I don't always have a chance to get to them. I read them, I process them, and I want to respond. But then something's calling my attention over there. And somebody wants me to call them back there. And insurance company wants this for me. So I lose track of all your comments. But I am going to go through all of them and answer them. You bring up some interesting pieces and you share a lot. So thank you for that on the channel. Nalani Phillips, I hope I have that correct. Hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Ellie Wynn, hello, my dear. Thank you so much for that. Good to see you. Okay, let me keep moving here. I'm surprised you guys are even on here tonight because it's Thursday night. Ellie Wynn says, interesting. Did not know that about projective identification. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fairy Girl with the Dabs, hello, good to see you. Welcome back. T Bunny Shy says, it's like they are wearing a yucky coat and they want us to wear it instead. There you go. That's such a good one. I'm going to star that. I'm also going to star you, Jeremy Robinson, because it can be projecting abuse. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jermaine. Sylvie, hello and welcome. Thank you. I am doing a little bit better. Thank you very much for that. Jermaine says, wow, so project. Oh, and Sylvie, did I say welcome? Welcome to tonight's live chat. Always glad to see you in the chat box. Jermaine says, wow, so projective identification is very different than projection. Oh, yeah. You want to know this? So there was a research study done a couple years ago. I'll post the article in the description box. There was an article done a couple years ago on projective identification. It's more of a psychodynamic kind of a theory. So really what that means is it's really looking at the internal processes of the human mind, the ego, right? The pieces of ourselves that we consider our identity, right? So when you hear psychodynamic, think of Sigmund Freud a little bit, and his daughter. Think in that realm. Okay, so we're talking about childhood issues and certain complexities with personality and these internal pieces of who we are. We're also talking about split parts and egos, right? So this article was done on the identification of a person who has been projected onto. And so in this article, the author says, I wish I could. I don't know. I do have my phone. Let me see if I can pull it up. I don't know if I want to read this to you guys because it is kind of complex. Maybe I'll post it in the description box. I think I'll post it because if I post it, you can read it and kind of reread it and get a feel for it, and I don't have to go fishing through it. But here's the quote in a nutshell. The researcher said it's almost like not wearing a coat so much. Who said it was like wearing a coat? Let me find you, because you're right to a certain extent. Yeah, Sylvie. Was it you, Sylvie? No, T Bunny Shy, it was you. You said it's like wearing a coat. So the author of this research study says this. It's not even like wearing a coat. It's not something that you put on necessarily. It's almost like being possessed by the other person's characteristics, poor values, embarrassment, the list goes on. For those of you who are scared of the word possessed, do not turn this live chat off, okay? No, I'm just kidding. Some people hear possessed and they're like, okay, off. We're going to another YouTube video. Really what this researcher is saying is this. It's something that you're not wearing. It's not a hat you're putting on, right? It's not shoes that you're stepping into. It's not a disposition that you've taken on for just a couple of minutes and you're going to be back to yourself. It's almost like your entire inner being becomes that of somebody else's. And so if you grow up under a very critical narcissistic parent, a mother who always had something to say to you that was critical, never accepted who you really were, had something ugly to say about your friends, your companion for many years, right? This is a pervasive chronic pattern of life with this mother, right? If this is the case that you have grown up under or you have dealt with, it's not like you're just going to get hit by all those things your mother is projecting. You're actually going to introject them. So they become a piece of you. Not everybody, but some people begin to take it on in such a way that it becomes almost like a possession. So I'm going to make sure that I post that research so that you can see exactly what the author is getting at. And it makes some sense, right? Think about those young people who are raised in a healthy way. They tend to be smart and insightful, but they get around their peers who are drinking, smoking, early sexual experiences that should not be happening. They're partying, they're engaging in burglary and robbery, right? They're juvenile delinquents, they're in a gang. What happens to the sweet boy or girl who has morals and ethics? If this bad group of kids projects on to this good boy or this good girl, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to start to introject or digest those pieces and characteristics of the friend group. And so then over time, they become just as evil, right? It's sad. It is sad when you really break it down. A seat at the King's table with Tanisha. Hello and welcome. And thank you so much. It is my belated birthday. My birthday was on Wednesday. So you want to know what I did? I did some shopping, just a little bit of shopping. I really just am a homebody. So I spent that time with my lovely mom and my lovely siblings. And then what did I do after that? I did some relaxation. I did some working out. I went for a jog, ate something delicious. And then I ended up in the ER. There you have it. because I was so very sick. And my mom is just like, you need to go just get checked out. I'm worried about you. So, but it was a beautiful birthday nonetheless. And some of you guys contacted me. I was so grateful for that. So thank you for your kindness and your love. Rochella says, it's like we become them. Unfortunately, over time, we identify with the negative parts of them. We have so much to unlearn. Yes. And I'm going to star that because that is the star comment of the night. It's like taking off garments, right? I got to get rid of this. I got to get rid of that. You know, this has to come off. That's not me. No, this needs to come out of my mind. Right. And so it's a process of reparenting yourself. That's kind of the psychological term there. It's, I have to reparent myself because everything I've taken in is horrible, right? Give it a thank you. Or one of those sweet ones that wished me a happy birthday. Thank you so much for that. I hope you're doing well tonight, and welcome to tonight's impromptu live chat. Always good to see you. Teresa Thompson, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Teresa Thompson says, as if foreign bodies with no, is that what it is? As if foreign bodies instead internalized, they should be out, never again in, and just stopped at healthy boundary sphere. Okay, somebody undo that for me. Somebody undo that. I don't know what that means. I'm just going to be humble and say I have no clue what that means. So undo that for me, Teresa Thompson. It sounds philosophical, but it's not clicking for my tired brain tonight. I want to know what it means. It sounds so deep. So bring that back to me. A and B says, you are hitting the nail on the head. Projection is so real. It is very real. It's scary. It's depressing because you can kind of unconsciously lose touch with who you are because you're buying into the false narrative. You're allowing that distortion of reality, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. You don't know that's what you're doing because it's an unconscious process, right? That is why abused individuals can sometimes become abusers, because being the abused child, they've heard everything, they've seen everything, they've felt everything, right? And so they grow up with no treatment, with no help, with no realization of who they are as a person. And they've kind of introjected all of that abusive parents' wrongful ways. And so then when they have their own children, they're doing the same thing. And sometimes, and I've had this in my practice, where parents will come to me and they'll say, I have become my mother. I have become my father, and I don't want to be this way, you know? And that is an example of projective identification. It's a scary thing. And Mur, hello. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to be here with you as well. I didn't know how a live chat on a Thursday night would go, so I'm so glad to see all of you. Hanifa El Amin says, I've rejected the projections of my malignant narcissist mother from my first breath. I could see her sick so early in my life, even as a young child. I love how you describe that, because in a sense, projective identification does happen when the parent is unwell psychologically, emotionally, right? Because really, if you watch the movie, what's that movie, guys? Mommy Dearest. Okay, if you watch the movie Mommy Dearest, you will understand what I'm getting at in this. You know, I can't think of her name who played the role, but she played this very unhealthy mother who was caught up in her ego, caught up in the fantasy of her mind in such a way that she wanted to be beautiful. She wanted to be this actress or singer. I can't remember which one she wanted to be. She wanted to be on Broadway. She wanted to be this wonderful, big, important person. And she would take these moments in her life to torture her daughter. And the torture wasn't even, it was unnecessary. I'll put it that way. The torture didn't have a real basis. The only basis that was there is that she was a very sick woman, and she was sick in terms of being psychiatrically sick, because she's now projecting all of these things that are deep down inside of her onto this unsuspecting child. And I can't remember if the daughter in Mommy Dearest was adopted or not. I want to say she was adopted, but this woman just lived in her mind in this false fantasy of a world, and her sickness, in quotation marks, as a mental individual, a person who is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Psychiatrically just unstable. You know, she made life horrible for this young girl. And the movie Mommy Dearest was shared with me at a very young age. I was probably like 10, 11, 12. And I remember thinking, thank God I don't have a mother like that, when I was young. But I was also looking at the dynamics at a very young age, and it scared me that a mother could actually be this way. So you are right when you say I could see her sick so early in my life. Sometimes if you are intuitive, mature, spiritual, you can catch those signs in no time. Clandestine Girl 16X, thank you so much, and you're welcome. Good to see you. Okay, Kate M, hello and welcome. Good to see you as well. Okay. Nolani Phillips, I hope I'm saying that right, says, just cared for a person like that. She hated herself and hated me for my care of her. Yeah. Sometimes if you can't put a finger on why you're hated, you just know you feel hated. You feel disregarded or disliked. When you know that there is no foundational reason for that, there's no room where maybe you've garnered that kind of a disposition towards that other person, or maybe you did something to hurt them or offend them. When you know that is not at the core of the issue, but you still feel hated and disregarded and unloved, that's when you know something is wrong. That's when you know something is wrong. Let me also throw this in here before throw this idea in here before I go back to the chat box and go back to the content. I'll pose it in a question for you. Have you ever been in the presence of a person? Because I know I have, where you're sharing your thoughts, feelings, right? You're having a normal conversation. You're not doing anything that would be negatively looked upon or down upon, right? You're just being you. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel in the presence of that other person like you're stupid, you're insecure, you have nothing going for you, that you are uneducated, that you are unintelligible, right? That you are valueless, unethical? Have you ever been in the presence of a person and you start feeling those things, but nobody's saying anything, right? That other person is just listening to you talk, or that other person is just looking at you or watching you or observing you, right? There's nothing going on the surface, right, that would point to how you're feeling. That is a example of projective identification. It's you can sense what that other person is thinking of you, feeling about you, judging you to be, discriminating. The list goes on, right? And it's not anything that you're doing wrong. You're just talking, maybe engaging, you're in that person's presence, but all of a sudden you feel like that person is not even verbally talking down to you, but you feel in the inside of your being like they are judging you and minimizing you and not really hearing you out and not thinking you are an intelligent person, right? Or they're not looking at you as an ethical person or a healthy, caring person, but you can't prove it because externally everything looks okay. That is another example of projective identification. It's these internal forces or these undercurrent forces that is making it really hard for you to communicate with that other person, because there's something going on in the mind, the heart, and the soul of the person that you are around or the person that you are talking to. I know you guys have to be able to relate to that. I've gone through that over the years, being a person of color, being a person who is multi-ethnic and doesn't just have one race in her family, and didn't just grow up with one race in my neighborhood, one race in my household, one race, you know what I mean? So being somebody from that cloth, right? Being cut from that cloth of multiculturalism and being really plugged into different areas in the world and within myself and my culture and other cultures, I have often felt that, which has been, sometimes the attitude of, how are you so intelligent? What training did you get? How is this possible? Oh, you didn't have an all African American family. You know what I mean? Oh, you really are indigenous. Oh, there's really some certifications there. It's not something that you can say the person is thinking and feeling about you because externally you feel okay, right? But on a job interview, right? Or you're trying to buy a house, or you're trying to rent something, or you're trying to travel overseas, right? Sometimes you can feel that other person looking like, you know, everything's fine, but under the surface, you're feeling like they're wondering about you, or they can't believe you did this, or you feel like they're saying you're stupid and uninformed, or you feel like they are thinking that you are inadequate. You don't know how to make those feelings within you just kind of be quiet, right? Because the other person is under the surface, most likely projecting onto you their own insecurities, right? Their own inadequacies, their own prejudiced and discriminatory and immature thoughts and feelings about other people, right? So it gets a lot deeper than just my mom and my dad engaged in projective identification. It can be I'm in the presence of somebody that makes me feel like they don't believe in me, right? That is also called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sadly, there are some people who catch that energy, and guess what they do with it? They introject, they digest it. And so then they become juvenile delinquents. They don't have the courage to say, yes, I'm half Hispanic. Yes, I am Native American. That was my tribe, you know? Yes, I'm biracial. Yes, my husband or my wife is that culture and race, you know? Yes, I can speak more than English, you know? Yes, I have been over to Africa, and I've been in France too, and Bogota, Colombia, right? You can feel the other person questioning you, you know? So that's a deeper, more intuitive part of this whole thing. It's really hard for you to say, you know, that person over there is just rude. I don't want to do anything with that person because I know they don't believe in me. I know they don't have my best interest at heart, right? And you may have somebody with you that says, how do you know that? They haven't done anything to you. Intuitively, right? Projective identification can hit you in an intuitive sense. So yeah, that's sad, right? Johanne Kobe says, my parents love to project onto me, but I do not identify with their projections. And that is a wonderful thing. Neither do I, Johanne Kobe, because if you are in the presence of somebody that has a preconceived notion about you, or they are envious of you or jealous of you, that's another place that you can kind of experience this. You know, when somebody's envious, you know, sometimes I can walk into a room and I can scan the room and I see that person over there that's looking at me and they're smiling, but I also sense on the inside a disposition that says, I don't like you because I'm envious, right? Or it could be, I don't like you because you're different. There's something here that's different. I can't figure it out. And because I can't categorize you, I'm just going to reject you because I don't get you, right? You can feel that too. But if you have this disposition, and I've learned this over time in my personal and professional life, if you kind of put up this block that says, I don't accept that projection, I don't accept that, you don't know me, you know, I'm not going to accept that envy from you. It's horrible. I wish you could be happy for me, but instead you're not. Okay, I don't receive that. And I'm not going to let it penetrate my heart, my soul, and my mind. I'm going to let you sit over there with that because that's your limited behavior, not mine. And if you have that kind of a mindset, Johanne, as you're pointing out, you can really block a lot of people's projections, right? And that really is a protective mechanism for you. Okay, one more comment. I'm going to get back into the content. Yeah. Kate M says, and if I mispronounced your name earlier, I'm sorry, Kate. I feel like I said Katie. Kate M says, if their parents made them feel like being overly caring makes you get taken advantage of. Yeah, I've seen that too. Yep. Mm-hmm. As a therapist, I've seen this. I've been a child, family, and adolescent therapist for a long time. And I've hugged a lot of kids. A lot of kids have hugged me. A lot of families have sat with me. The list goes on. But I have seen in some of the families that I've had in the past, I'll give you this example. And Kate, you're going to be my last response, and I'm going to go back to the content. But being a therapist is a very spiritual, intuitive, psychological, emotional, and behavioral process. It's like you've got all these different inches and pieces of yourself that is being pulled on as a therapist. So there have been times in the past where I've had kids who have hugged me, which they tend to do when we've had tough conversations. We've had a lot of years of therapy under our belt. They're sweet kids and they like something they see about me. And, they will hug me and I'll hug them right back. And I'll say, keep working. Okay. You're doing a really good job. And they'll say, thank you, Miss Tamara. And they're out the door. Right. But I've had the experience where sometimes a kid will hug me, 7, 8, 9, 10. They'll hug me. I'll hug them back and I'll give them a positive, keep up the good work. Okay. You're doing really good. And they'll say, thank you. Right. And sometimes the kids have come over to me and they've just, grabbed my leg and hugged me, or they've asked me to bend down so they can hug me. And I will sense from the person who is the true insecure person in the room. I have seen them kind of like jump, almost like, oh God, don't hug your therapist. You should not trust her, or you should not be engaging with her in an emotional way because that's dangerous. And over time, what I've done with those kind of parents and family members, I'll say, sometimes if it's worth me even bringing it up, sometimes it's not worth it. But I will bring it up at times and I'll say, you know what? I noticed that your little girl has an easier approach to things and she's more open to kindness. And she hugged me because she felt that was a good thank you, Miss Tamara, for listening to me today. And I saw you kind of like lunge almost kind of forward within yourself because you're afraid. What are you afraid of? And the one mom that I had over 7 years ago, she was like, I'm just afraid of being hurt. I've been abandoned so many times. And so I encouraged her, do not let your stuff impact the wonderful, free-spirited, loving nature of your little girl. Let her be herself. And I referred mom to treatment, okay? But Kate M., you're right. Sometimes parents can make you feel a certain way just because they have issues of their own, right? And you're right. Sometimes they will say being loving and caring makes you a little bit weak. But I never agree with that. I'm sorry, guys. I need one step. Okay. Excuse me. What are the common issues with these kind of family members? Well, excuse me. One is a defensive posture and stance. I'm not going to go over this too much because I just gave that to you in the example of the mother and the child who hugged me. So defensive stance, some people do like this, right? Body language. I'm closed off. I'm feeling intimidated. I'm feeling insecure. Some people do it as a relaxation thing. My brother does this when he's tired of hearing us talk, but some people also cross their arms and sometimes they're like way up here because they're feeling really defensive, So a defensive stance and posture. Most people will project that onto you, right? And they'll make you feel insecure, or they'll cause you to pump the brakes when you shouldn't. Just like I told this mother, don't let your fear stop your loving, free-natured little girl. Don't do that. So a defensive posture. The other thing is these kind of individuals, especially if they are parents and they're projecting onto you as their child, they are very paranoid. They also have a fear of being abandoned, judged, or minimized, right? And they kind of have this they against me stance. They are against me. They are against you. And so what happens? Well, that family member, that parent, that partner that you have in a relationship, they're projecting onto you all their fears. They're projecting onto you, all of these unhealthy ways that they're thinking about relationships. And so if we're not careful, we can kind of introject, right? We can take those in and we can develop over time this attitude of they're against us or them against us. And it doesn't have to be that, but it can happen that way, right? Feeling that you are the jealous one and not them. So think of a sibling. Your sister has always been jealous of you because you've always been smart. You've been quick-witted. You're intuitive. You have a good job. You have a family. The list goes on. She can't stand it. What does she say to you? Why are you so jealous of me? Excuse me, guys. My throat is dry. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. I don't want to go into a coughing fit. Okay. But your sister may say to you, why are you so jealous of me? And you may say, what? Me jealous of you? Why would I be that way? And your sister may say, you've always been jealous of me. Just admit it, right? And you guys will go back and forth, back and forth. The projection is this, that I'm projecting my jealousy of you onto you, and I'm making it your problem because you're jealous of me. I'm not jealous of you. It's you're jealous of me. And that is how some people feel content with being jealous, right? I'm just going to say you're the jealous one. That's all. I'm the one who's caring, open, and I want everybody to have things in life and be happy. When the reality is no. On the inside, they are jealous of you. Another thing is affairs. That's another example, right? Affairs can be this way too. Are you cheating on me? Why are you doing A, B, and C, right? And you may say, I'm not doing anything. Well, the person who is blaming you or trying to kind of frame you as an infidel, as a person who's not truthful and honest, they're doing it in their time, right? They're actually the culprit, but they will project that onto you. The other thing is this kind of judging and feeling judged. And this is what research has highlighted as an issue for most people with projective identification. It's an unconscious kind of mentality. And I'm saying all these judgmental things about other people, but the issue is this. I'm going to say that you are judgmental because I don't want to have to digest the reality that I'm a very judgmental person. And you make it, some people say, you know what, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm very judgmental. They'll kind of throw it out there before you learn about it later. But these kind of individuals are judgmental and they don't want anybody to know that they're judgmental. So they just kind of project onto other people, or they kind of take the stance of, I hate when people judge other people. It's so unnecessary. And you may say, isn't it? It just, come on, we all have things. And, let's say this is your cousin that you're talking to. And your cousin says, I just don't know why people think it's okay to judge. As soon as you get into the car, from shopping, let's say, did you see that woman in aisle 7? Oh my God. She literally bumped me out of the way. She was so rude. Not that I'm trying to be judgmental. Have you seen people like that? Not that I'm trying to be judgmental, but like that lady in aisle 7, oh my God, makes me want to go to the gym. I had a client that said that to me. That's actually a true story. One of my clients in past years said that to me. This woman in aisle so-and-so at Target, and she was very judgmental, but she was the first person to tell me, probably the first therapeutic session or therapeutic appointment or therapy appointment, she may have revealed, I'm not a critical kind of a person. My mother's critical, but I'm not critical. But she came back a couple sessions later and she showed she was really the critical one. Feeling insecure and mocking other people. There's an example of projective identification. I'm going to mock you over there, even though I feel insecure. I feel insecure about my hair. So now I'm going to point out your hair. Why would you dye your hair purple, right? Or let's say your narcissistic mother says to you, is there a reason why your hair isn't blonde? Is there a reason why your hair isn't black, brunette, brown? Why in the world are you changing your hair? It looks horrible. When the reality is she feels within herself that she has a way that she doesn't like. She doesn't like how her hair looks. She doesn't think she's attractive, and she's projecting that onto you. Projective identification kicks in when you actually digest her judgments of you, and then you start acting a certain way, or you start saying things that are similarly said from her. Does that make sense, guys? They have a very compelling psychological influence. They can take your mind with their projections, and they can move it this way, they can move it this way, they can move it that way. Why? Because they have a very compelling psychological influence. And again, like the research article I put in the description box highlighted, it's almost like being possessed in a sense. You've taken on what they think and feel about you and they say about you. And it's so digested, for lack of a clinical term, that it's hard to undo the process. And like Rochelle said earlier, it really is an undoing process. You really have to unlearn those pieces that are obvious within you, if you can see them. Psychology says it's a very unconscious experience. There's a split self that happens. You know who you are, but then you're also taking on the behaviors of that other person in your life who has projected onto you. So it's like you're split in the middle. Okay, I am going to give you the impact, and then I'm going to go to the chat box and we can wrap up. Okay, guys, what does psychology says is the impact of projective identification? And I've also seen this in my clinical practice. Number one, a distorted reality. When you start buying into the person's reality of being a certain way, then you kind of digest their distorted reality. Having a very critical, angry, hostile father who doesn't know how to just be proud of you and has some kind of slight or dig that he always has to get over to you, having a father like that could cause you to walk away and say, did I see that correctly? Is dad really trying to hurt me? Why would he say that to me, right? And your mind just kind of ruminates on that, right? Why would he say that? Why would he do that? Who does he think I am? Does he not understand that I'm successful? Doesn't he get that it's hard for me to be confident in myself? What doesn't he get, right? You probably have all those things floating around in your head. What happens over time is you then begin to digest all of his negatives, right? And those negative things he says and, does against you. And then your reality gets distorted, right? You don't see who you really are. You don't see the progress you've made in life. You don't see where there's hope for you. You don't believe your marriage is going to work. You don't think that relationship is going to work for you anymore. And that's because there's been a distortion of reality because of that person, that family member, that relationship partner who's projected some very negative things onto you. So distortion of reality. It's an emotional cycle. It's a cycle. You may get out of it, right? And then end up back in it 2 or 3 days later. You may get out of it and then end back up a month or two down the road, right? It's a constant emotional cycle. And if you have a very critical parent, a very critical and judgmental sibling, right? You're going to constantly get hooked up in that emotional cycle of projective identification. So the best way to kind of undo that emotional cycle is figure out how it happens, right? How does it start? What keeps it going? And how in the heck do I get out of this, right? Because you don't want to be in that emotional cycle. It's a bunch of chaos. The other thing is identity confusion. Who am I? What do I actually think? What do I actually feel? And you may start to question your soul because you've been around that person for so long who's saying negative things and they're critical and they're judgmental and they're projecting all their insecurities onto you. How in the world do I even think, right? Who am I? So you're going to have identity challenges. The other thing is that you may have an inability to accept your own perception of reality. I'll go over that again. You may have this inability to accept your own perception of reality. You've heard so much yapping in your ear over the years by that person who's projecting onto you, right? And you've kind of digested within your heart and soul some of what they've said, even though you've tried to not do that, right? So what happens over time, you hear so much yapping in your ear that you begin to struggle with whether your perception of reality is true or false. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it correct or is it incorrect? And that can drive you bonkers, right? For years and years of trauma, depression, anxiety, family trauma, family challenges, if you have had years of that, and in the midst of all of that, you've got this person who's projecting onto you their own deep-seated ugliness, cruelty, shame, guilt, right? Then you can start to feel invalidated over time. It's almost like a form of gaslighting, somewhere you get lost in the mix. And if you say, I don't think this way, I don't feel this way, this is your problem, this is your stuff, right? You may get a family member who says, you very much do think like that. You very much behave this way, so it's like a form of gaslighting. So you begin to feel invalidated over time, right? You may start to feel, and this is what research highlights as well, you may begin to feel like you've made everything up in your family. I've made up that they were abusive. I've made up that they are psychotic. I've made up that they are toxic. I've made up that I need to go no contact. I've made it up in my mind that they were cruel to me and harsh to me, right? And being up under that projection for so long, you get lost, right? It's like trying to see through foggy glasses. You can't see things very clearly. And so you can begin to feel and think that you have made everything up. That is not as bad as I think it is. And that is not the case. And let me also give you the last one in this category before I go to the chat box and wrap up. There's a lot of loneliness and confusion as well that can happen. Loneliness and confusion. Confusion. Are these my thoughts or your thoughts? Are these my behaviors or your behaviors? Are these my values or your values, right? And really feeling lonely and lost could be, I don't really know who I am. So I don't even know what kind of friend I want. I don't even know what kind of husband I want, wife I want, friend, coworker. I'm just existing, and I'm lonely. These are interesting pieces of the puzzle, right, guys? I'm coming back tomorrow night in our typically scheduled Friday live chat where I'm going to bring up some of this. And then Saturday, if I can do a live chat, I don't know if I can, I'm going to try my very best. We'll talk a little bit more about this. This is something, right, guys? I only scratched the surface, believe it or not. I scratched the surface. Projective identification. If you got nothing else from this conversation tonight, I want you to walk away with these two things. Projective identification is different from projection. Projection is something that we all may do at certain points in our life. It is a defense mechanism, but it's also a communication pattern or form. And it isn't always negative. Okay, so that's projection. Projective identification is a very, very challenging and complex personality and psychological process that really takes root deep within the psyche, deep within the soul and the heart. And sometimes it's so deep in the heart and the soul and the mind that you can't even see that you're doing it. Other people may be able to point it out, or you may learn to see it happening if you're in therapy and you're growing and you're learning. But projective identification, keep it in the category of this is a deep psychic process that isn't always easy to tease apart. And I really need someone who understands the psyche to tell me what's happening to me. Projective identification, taking on somebody else's deep-seated issues that have nothing to do with you, but they become your problem over time. Projection is not necessarily as in-depth. Those are the things that I want you to walk away with. All right, guys, I'm going to go to the chat box really quickly and just sign off because we're going to talk tomorrow. Hopefully you guys can come back and see me tomorrow. Okay, let me find some people I haven't seen. Danita J. Minor. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. I don't know if that's for me or if that is for the live chat. I'm not going to say, let me add some cushion. Okay. Let me add some cushion around what you're saying, Danita. I agree. Pharmaceuticals are not always necessary, and you really should be very, very careful with the kind of medications that you are put on or encouraged to take, right? I am very, very, very sensitive to medication. However, can I be the person that has to take medication to get better and feel better? Yes. I'm going to be drowsy. Excuse me. I'm going to have a really hard time thinking, but I'm going to push through that and I'm going to be okay because I have things to do and I'm a fighter, kind of a thing, right? So that's kind of my way of being. When I was in college, oh man, so many years ago, I was a freshman. And I was in the process of being diagnosed with chronic migraines. I didn't know I had them until I went to college. And they were literally knocked down, go to the emergency room and get IV fluids because you're going to die kind of migraine. And let me tell you, they had me on everything. And I had lost so much weight. I was so thin. I should find a picture. I was thin, guys. And, I just didn't want to eat. I didn't have an appetite. I was sleepy. I was irritable. And at a certain point, Danita, I'm supporting you here. At a certain point, I was like, you know what? I don't want any more medication. Please get this away from me. I'm going to have to find some natural remedies. And I was looking at lavender tea. I was looking at meditation. I was looking at yoga. I was going to the gym several times a week. I mean, the list just went on. So sometimes you can say, you know what? No medications. I can't do it. I'm going to go this way instead. Other times you can say, you know what? I'll take that medication because the side effects are not bad. It's going to level me out a little bit, but then I'm going to say goodbye to all those other medications, right? You may also have to say goodbye to medications that are new, right? Because we're still doing studies and trials and trying to figure out the side effects, and the list goes on. So, and Danita, I got to throw this out there for those of you who are on medications and need to be. Sometimes there is no other way for some people, right? And we can't nonchalantly say come off the pharmaceuticals, because there are some people who are literally living their everyday and breathing because of pharmaceuticals, right? And we're talking about people who have diabetes, people who have heart conditions, people who have had strokes and cannot function, and they have to have medication, like my mother, to regulate their blood pressure, right? We also have people who are struggling with severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, and they become very psychotic and very delusional without their medication. So we have to be careful with that statement. We have to make sure that we stack that statement with knowledge, awareness, understanding, right? So I just wanted to back you up there. I totally get it. At the same time, we have to be careful, because some people may listen and come off their medication and die, come off their medication and engage in a school shooting, come off their medication and do something very horrible, right? Or come off their medication and get deathly ill. So we do have to be careful with that. But I do agree with your sentiments. Pickle Dissonance. Oh my God. Now I'm going to love you. I love that screen name. Thank you so much for that. It does sound like an electrocyte imbalance. I agree. I just didn't know what to do about it. And I asked when I went to the ER on Wednesday night, I didn't even think to ask. But when I got in my car to go back home, I'm like, I wonder if that's what I need, to drink some Pedialyte or to drink, I don't know, something that brings my electrolytes back up. Maybe. I don't know. I appreciate you guys. For giving me those ideas. I really do. SH, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. We're going to sign off here in a little bit. Give it a think, says, so sorry, Tamara. Grounding and vagal nerve tone may be helpful. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but it works to get you into your rest and relaxed nervous system. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honestly thinking of doing something along those lines. Give it a think, So thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate you. Jermaine says the family emotional garbage can. Yeah, it can sound like that. Thank you, Clandestine Girl 6X. Oh my God. It's time for me to close out here. 16X. Thank you so much for that. Oh, I thank you so much for that. I love that. And I truly appreciate you for saying that. Yes. Yeah. When you have to do things like care for your health, you know what I mean? And it's the day of your birthday and you're at the ER just trying to figure out why the heck you're so dizzy, nauseous, and sick. That's when you're like, okay, you know what? I am a full-blown grown adult, aren't I? There's no more happy birthdays. I feel hot flashes coming up. I'm like this every day, all day. My kids that come to see me for therapy, they just crack up. Sometimes I do it on purpose to make them laugh and put a smile on their face. But you start to realize that, okay, these birthdays, these are for young people. Because now that we're getting older and fully grown up, you kind of learn that your birthday may entail getting your car fixed. It may entail going to the ER. It may also entail doing some laundry. You know what I mean? Yeah. MN Odell, always glad to see you in the live chat. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. MNL Odell says, wouldn't it be awesome if people, I know what you meant, if people learn to deal with this stuff instead of passing it on? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would be so much better. In an unconscious kind of subconscious way, there may be some people who do want to work on it, but they don't know how to move from intense shame, intense guilt. And so they project it onto somebody else because it's so unbearable to them, Q Quote Award, hello, good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I know I'm just getting to you. We've been talking for a while, but I want to recognize you. Thank you, Kate M. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Rochella. Thank you so much, Ellie Wynn. Yeah, thank you so much, Sylvie. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, you guys are wonderful. Thank you, Danita. Thank you, Andmer. I appreciate you. Jermaine says, Tamara, what qualifications would you recommend to find the right therapist for this? Like trauma trained, over trauma informed, specialty in narcissistic abuse. Honestly, I would look for a psychodynamic therapist. I'm not one because to me, you got to do a lot of mental jumps to really learn psychodynamic theory. And that's just not grounded enough for me. It's like, for me, psychodynamic therapy feels like it's way up there in the clouds in the philosophical realm. And I want to be down here with people in the trenches who need concepts, who need true help, who need practical conversations. You know what I mean? So for me, I've always shied away from psychodynamic theory or therapy. But you may want to look for a therapist who does a lot of healing work, that does a lot of work with childhood trauma, that does a lot of focus on defense mechanisms and, dynamics of relationships, and maybe someone who understands trauma. They can sometimes be psychodynamic, but you really do want to look for that therapist who understands the dynamics of the self, right? The dynamics of the ego, the mind, the heart, the soul, split selves, unconscious thinking, subconscious thinking. I know it's hard to give that a label, but I would just summarize it as psychodynamic. So you're looking for a therapist who gets, distorted realities and childhood issues and challenges with the parents, right? The ego, the mind. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Okay. Thank you, Jermaine. I appreciate you. Okay. Let me keep moving. Hold on. Mark Lee says, my mental self-image from my family helped make me very open to narcissistic relationships. I'm very sure about that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. That could be a part of projective identification as well. Your parent projects onto you this idea that you are not worth it. You internalize or introject that idea that you're not worth it. You find her over there and she's really cute, although she's a prostitute, although she's not very faithful in relationships, but you like the way she looks. You get wrapped up in her world and now you're dating. Then 2 weeks down the line, you say, you know what? I think I want to marry you. Right. And then she says, let's do it, because she's just happy to have somebody that wants her. And you get married. And guess what? 2 months later, you're divorced. That is literally how it goes for some people. Why? Because the parents had a lot of projections that impacted their children's self-image and self-esteem. They digest that, and then they go around in the world and they're looking for people that they feel that they can capture, or they feel that they can only, gain because they're at a certain level, or they don't have enough money, or they're not very attractive or very smart, whatever the case may be. You kind of internalize that, and you just run after people that kind of meets you where you are. And if you're here because of projective identification in your life, then you're going to look for that woman that's maybe a little bit beneath you, right? Or you're going to look at that woman who's kind of here with you, and you both have issues that need help because you both are looking at each other in a way that you shouldn't, and you both have unresolved issues, right? So you're right, Mark Lee, it does play a role. It plays a huge role. I have a client, all she has dated are men who are already taken. I had another client that only went after women who are in committed relationships. And those clients come to me, which I don't do therapy in that sense, with, in that kind of area of problems. So I end up referring those kind of clients because I don't have the skill sets to kind of manage that. But I have had clients say, you know what, I don't know why I keep going after the same guy, and they're always married. Or I don't know why I keep going after the same woman. And my one client so many years ago, he says, bruh. And I'm just sitting there like, why are you calling me bruh? I'm a therapist, but okay. So he looked at me and he says, bruh, I don't know why I keep going after these women. I don't know why I keep doing this. He said, I just keep doing this. I don't get it, And he was saying all these kind of things in slang language. And I was like, yeah, I think I understand what you're talking about. I asked him to break it down in common lingo so I can understand it. And really what he was saying to me was, I feel that I am beneath. So my self-esteem is here. And I have to either have a woman that is beneath my low self-esteem or at the same level as mine. And Mark Lee, he stayed stuck, you know? So you're right. That does play a really big role. Miss Janine, hello. Good to see you. Always glad to see you. Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. I hope you're doing all right. Clarissa Torres, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. All right, guys. Coral Sky, hello and welcome. Good to see you. We're going to sign off here in just 1 second. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. SH says, I think they can be very rigid, black and white thinking. Either you are for them or against them. Yes, that's called a cognitive distortion. James McDonald, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. I hate that. I don't know what is wrong with YouTube. I have no idea. Like, I don't get why they don't send notifications out to all of my subscribers. Double check your bells. Right on the side of join the channel, subscribe to the channel should be a bell. And if that is not highlighted, that means you don't have it set for notifications. You might want to turn the notification off and turn it back on again just to see if that kick starts something. But I'm glad you made it, James McDonald. Nimble, can I say that? Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. You say, I've had people try to make me jealous because they know I've had a difficult life. So they assume I have jealousy issues, which made me angry. And then and let me start this over, which made me angry. And they then twisted and tried to project I was jealous. Oh yeah, that happens too. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I hate that. I hate that too. It's like a trap, right? They're just like, come over here because I have some things I know you're going to be jealous about. I hope you fall into this trap so I can just project onto you. You know what I mean? James McDonald says their projections is an excuse just to minimize and dump their own shadows onto you, all because they never had the courage to face them and go down or go deep within. I'll put it that way. I like that, James McDonald. That is awesome. Very true. I very much agree. All right. I'm just saying hello to you guys. Serena Butler. Serena Butler, good to see you. Welcome back tonight. She has a question, but how do you know the other person is thinking negative things? And it's not just you being paranoid or having a negative self-idea. Absolutely, it can be. It's hard to tease that apart, right? So that's where you have to become your own internal psychologist, because you have to ask yourself, is this A or is this B? And if you know that you are not a jealous-hearted person, if you are not a competitive person, if you are not a person who has low self-esteem, and in this person's presence, you feel like all of that, then you can kind of safely say that this is not me, that this feels like a projection, right? If you know that you are intelligent, but you feel that other person is seeing you as unintelligent, and you feel that deep down in your heart and soul that they see you as not being very intelligent, you can also say, okay, maybe this is a projection, right? But you have to have some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Introspection. So you can tease apart what's what. Is this my insecurity, right? Or is this them projecting onto me? And if you know, like I know about myself, that there is no insecurity here, I'm quite comfortable with who I am, and nobody is going to make me feel insecure, then you can safely say that this is being in the presence of this other person. They are projecting this onto me because they have an issue with me that doesn't sit with me. It starts with them. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I would think of that. Ash Shakur Whitaker, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Thank you so much, James McDonald. Yes. Team Mac, hello and welcome, friend. I haven't seen you in a while. Team Mac, I'm going to read yours. You're my last one. Being an introvert, I'm always being attacked at work for being quiet, even though I have coworkers who are just as quiet and people let them be. I've made more enemies than those who cause problems. Yeah. Ooh, I know what that's like. I used to be in my early years, so my early, mid, and late 20s, I was the quiet person. I still am. I'm quiet when I shop, quiet when I'm driving, quiet when I'm at a conference, and I only give you what I think you need from me, right? And I only give energy when I know that you guys are looking for me to give you energy. Other than that, I'm going to be quiet. You know, nothing is wrong with that. If you feel that, Team Mac, that's them most likely projecting that onto you. But I totally understand what you're saying. It's like they can't accept that you need that time and peace by yourself. You know, I totally get it. All right, guys, for those of you that I didn't get a chance to get to, forgive me, but I do see you and I do hear you. Thank you so much for your participation in this impromptu live chat. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. I forgot what tomorrow's chat is about, but I think it's something that you guys are going to like to see. Let me just pull it up really, really quickly so that I can give you something kind of to not necessarily look forward to, but just kind of, hold on, guys, that you can, that you can kind of clearly look forward to for tomorrow. It's an interesting kind of a chat. I think you guys are going to like it. It is the brother and sisters who are sociopaths and how those siblings impact you. So if you have a sibling, you're going to want to see that because you may have a sibling who's a sociopath, antisocial personality disorder. I'm going to break that down and tell you how that is very different from being a sociopath. So you might want to come back tomorrow. All right, guys, I love you so much. Thank you for your participation tonight. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you Friday. Bye-bye.